Welcome to this fantastic program that is one of many, hopefully, in the future, shared efforts between ourselves and the Brooklyn Historical Society with the incredibly generous support of National Grid. Just to keep things moving, I'm going to step aside and hand the program over to one of the people who actually did all the work on it, and that is Dr. Sara Rzeszutek, Associate Professor of History here at the college. Welcome.
Thank you for being here to help us kick off today's series of events. St. Francis College is thrilled to be a part of the commemoration of Jackie Robinson's Major League Baseball debut. 70 years ago this month, he broke the baseball's color barrier. Before the end of Jim Crow, school integration, civil and voting rights acts, and even the integration of the military, Jackie Robinson was an important figure in the long arc of the struggle for Black freedom and civil rights in the United States. He used his platform, the baseball diamond, to become a visible symbol of the possibility of racial equality in the US. I'd like to thank everyone who worked tirelessly to put together today's events, including people at National Grid, Carol DeCina, Christina Gueli, Renee McClure, Terry Yard, Alana Russo, and Jackie Vando. At Brooklyn Historical Society, Deborah Schwartz, Marcia Ely, Claudia Tierney, and Heather Mallon. And at St. Francis College, Timothy Houlihan, Robert Oliva and the special events staff, Richard Welkin, and Tom Flood and the development staff. We'd also like to thank Chase Bank and Peter O'Malley for funding that supported all of these events. A few more quick points, and then I'll introduce our speaker. First, Brooklyn Historical Society has generously provided a few artifacts from their collection that you're welcome to look at on your way out if you didn't see them on the way in. They are a signed baseball with Jackie Robinson's signature and his teammates, an early Brooklyn Dodgers helmet, the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers World Series Championship program, and a proclamation from the Brooklyn Borough President that states that April 15th is now Jackie Robinson Day in Brooklyn. Also, if you haven't already, please be sure to grab one of the brochures that was created by the students in the Freshman Honors Seminar on Sports and Protests on your way out. Our speaker for today is Professor Joseph Dorinson, who teaches at Long Island University, Brooklyn. A noted authority in the field of popular culture, Dorinson's research specialties span sports history, in particular the Brooklyn Dodgers and African-American sports heroes, humor studies, Russian immigration, Brooklyn and Jewish history, and World War II movies and music. He has appeared on television and radio news programs on Fox News, NBC Morning News, WLIW-TV, New York One News, and WNYC. Professor Dorinson has co-edited 2 books, Paul Robeson, Essays on His Life and Legacy, and Jackie Robinson, Race, Sports, and the American Dream. And he's written many articles on sports, humor, and popular culture. He has also been active in prior commemorations of Jackie Robinson, including organizing a conference for the 50th anniversary of his Major League Baseball debut. Dr. Dorinson.
This appeared in my op-ed piece, which I wrote for the Daily News on March 28th, 1997, in preparation for this major conference. I am not a doctor. I never finished my dissertation, so I am the dubious, distinguished holder of an ABD, all but dissertation. So when I was interviewed by the New York Times in a profile that came as a result of serving as sort of historian of the Subway series between the Mets and the Yankees, the first one since 1956, I told the interviewer that I'm not a doctor, I'm not even a dentist. And so a lot of people have been calling me doctor, said the would-be Dr. Dorinson. I'm happy to be here. In fact, I'm happy to be anywhere because I'm going through a very difficult period trying to cope with cancer So if you see some rays emanating from my head, it's because I've been radiated. And so if I falter a bit, I may sit down to recapture some energy. What I want to do is explain the significance of Jackie Robinson. I want to show a film clip that demonstrates Jackie's genius for baseball and his ability to communicate with young people. And finally, I want to summarize Jackie's achievements. I'll start by holding up a study guide I did for the New York Times in 1997, commissioned so that young people could learn about Jackie's legacy. And it's a legacy that was almost obscured by happenings in American society. So let me begin. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives, wrote Jackie Roosevelt Robinson shortly before his death in 1972. His was a short life by modern standards, but what a life. Stephen Spender's words, written in the contemplation of heroes, those who were truly great, who fought for life, who traveled a short way to the sun and left the vivid air signed by their honor, certainly applies to Mr. Robinson. With amazing grace, under enormous pressure, Jackie broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball on April 15, 1947, which was the eve of Passover. So my recently deceased friend, Henry Foner, a major labor leader, asked the 4 questions on Seder night. Why is this night different from all others? And his father ritualistically replied, he said, Dad, with all due respect, this is different. Tonight, America became closer to its promise. Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball. Thus, the Robinson saga is really comparable to a resurrection saga. Robinson gave life, new life, to an oppressed people. Not only African Americans, who were then designated as Negroes, and sometimes the N-word, but also people, Catholics who were on the margin of society, and Hispanics, women, and not to mention people of different race and ethnicity. Jackie brought a new style to baseball, speed coupled with power, daring with panache from the Negro Leagues to the center of American sports. Not only did Jackie change the game, he also transformed spring training, hotels, and segregated housing, and won. Not only was he nimble and quick, he also made, in the words of sports writer Wendell Smith, he made the turnstiles click. In 10 years as a Brooklyn Dodger, he led his team, formerly called the Bums, to 6 pennants, almost 8, because 2 were lost on the last day of the season, 1 in overtime, and the only World Series victory that the Dodgers in Brooklyn could attain. The Dodgers, with exceptions of 1916, 1920, and 1941, were a study in futility. Willard Mullen and other cartoonists appropriated the name Bums to designate the Dodger franchise. Jackie changed all that. After departing Game 7 in 1956 to those damned Yankees, and it occurred to me that the Yankees won so many times until 1955 when the Dodgers finally cashed through, I thought that God was actually a Yankee fan. And to my amazement, the Dodgers won. And there was celebration. The Bassett Hotel nearby was a scene of revelry. The Dodger Tavern, right across from what is now Long Island University, formerly the Brooklyn Paramount, was also filled with revelers in the streets. And After this departure, Jackie Robinson compiled, you might say, an outstanding record. He hit for a lifetime batting average of .311. And what would that be worth in current salary terms? Several million a year, certainly, maybe more. But there are, as Winston Churchill and previous, I guess it was another prime minister, Mr. Disraeli, who said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So we have to go beyond statistics to appreciate Jackie's import and impact. Despite his heroic achievements, Jackie was almost buried in obscurity in the so-called 60s, the years of relevance. To some, he was too conservative. He was a registered Republican, though his wife, his beloved wife, Rachel, insists he was independent. I think the record shows opposite. He was a Republican of the moderate variety. That's an endangered species these days. But he was in the style of Nelson Rockefeller, Jacob Javits, Louis Lefkowitz. And so perhaps as the 60s turned the youth culture into a more freewheeling, even left-wing, Jackie seemed out of touch with the young people. Some thought he was too conservative, others thought he was too radical. Jackie was angry. He was angry because throughout his life he witnessed discrimination. As a youngster growing up in Pasadena, California, he could not swim in the local public swimming pool. So one night he and his friends from the Pepper Street gang climbed over the fence and swam in forbidden waters. They were arrested. Jackie and his friends was denied food and water for many hours. Finally, the police, showing some sympathy, tinged with racism, pushed watermelons underneath the gates. Jackie, another time, chased somebody who called him a nigger, and the perpetrator of this racist epithet was not punished, but Jackie was put in cuffs. His brother, Mac Robinson, was the outstanding track and field star who at Oregon University set all kinds of records for the long jump. And in the 1936 Olympics, he came in second to Jesse Owens in the 220. And when he came home to Pasadena, there was no work for him until he got a job as a street cleaner. And when the street cleaners tried to organize a union, there was no job for Mac Robinson. Jackie was arguably the greatest athlete of his era. At UCLA, he majored in 4 sports and lettered in them. Baseball, ironically, was his weakest sport. Perhaps football was his best. In the 1939 season, Jackie averaged 12 yards a carry. In 1940, after his class graduated, he played in the All-Star game. At that time, an All-Star collegiate team played the champions of the NFL, in this case, the Chicago Bears. And Jackie caught a 35-yard touchdown. And after the game was over, the press interviewed the Chicago Bear team, and many of the players on defense said the only person they feared on the college team was Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. Several credits short of his degree, he left school. There was no future for him. He briefly coached basketball. He played for the Los Angeles Bulldogs, a semi-pro baseball team. And then he came into the world of Uncle Sam as a soldier. He was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, where he befriended the heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis. And Jackie tried to become an officer as well as a gentleman. but he was denied access to the exam. So he asked Joe Louis to please intervene on his behalf. And Louis, who had some panache and some access to the White House, got in touch with one of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's associates. And before you could say Jackie Robinson stole second base, he was an officer and a gentleman. Now, the commandant of the fort wanted Jackie to play football, but not baseball. Football could be integrated. Baseball could not. And Jackie protested. He wanted to play both sports, even though he was injured. He felt it was important to make a statement. He also tried to get PX privilege for his fellow black officers and ran into trouble. And as punishment, Jackie was sent to Texas, Fort Riley, Texas. And there, one incident in 1944, he was riding on a bus with some women who were married to officers, and he was sitting next to a very light-skinned black woman. And the bus driver thought he was violating a code. He yelled at him, "Get to the back of the bus," and he used the N-word. And Jackie protested. And the outcome of that exchange was Jackie was pulled over, humiliated by a subordinate sergeant, evoked a lying testimony from a secretary, and he was court-martialed. Thanks to the intervention of the NAACP and a brilliant white lawyer, he won acquittal. But it came at a price. And when his commanding officer at Fort Hood in Texas said, "Jackie, you're a leader of men. I want you to take the black soldiers under your wing and go to Europe." And Jackie said, "No. If I'm not good enough to ride in a bus, to which I'm entitled by federal law, if I'm not good enough to play football or baseball in an integrated setting, I'm not ready to lead black soldiers." So he was recruited to play for the Kansas City Monarchs, which was the outstanding organization and owned by a white owner, the only one in the Negro Leagues at that time. And according to the record, Jackie, although had a weak arm, was playing shortstop. He hit .387 and caught the eye of scouts, including Clyde Sukeforth of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Jackie was invited on a ruse to come to Brooklyn. And just a block away from here, in front of a bank that now has a placard indicating his presence, he was actually interviewed by Branch Rickey. He was initially under the impression that he was going to play for a black team in Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Brown Dodgers. Not so, Rickey advised him. "We want you to play for the real Brooklyn Dodgers." And as you'll see in the film clips shortly, there was a Christ-like scenario that Rickey laid out for Jackie. You must, for at least for the first 2 years, not talk back, not fight back. And Jackie was appalled because he always was a fighter for his rights, whether it was at Fort Hood or in Pasadena, or when he was traveling with the Negro League team. He once came to a gas station to fill up a major bus, and the bathroom for black people was closed, was out of order, and he asked for usage in the whites only, and was denied. At which point, Jackie said, "If you're not going to let us use the bathroom, stop pumping gas." And the cracker behind the gas pump said, "Well, we can't lose this sale." and gave in. So Jackie was a fighter, and Branch Rickey knew that. He picked Jackie not because he was the best baseball player in the Negro Leagues, but he was the most desirable. He had gone to college. He was almost 3 or 6 credits short of graduation. He was articulate. He didn't drink and he didn't smoke. He had a girlfriend. So what Rickey was looking for was a person, not only a gifted baseball player, but a person who could command respect. And so in that exchange, Robinson asked, in puzzlement, "You mean you want me not to fight back?" And Rickey said yes. And he gave him a book about the life of Christ written by an Italian author named Papini. And he said, "Jackie, you must follow the life of Christ. You must turn the other cheek." And Jackie did. In his rookie year with the Dodgers, he hit .296 and was extraordinary gifted fielder. He played first base, not a familiar position for him. During the season early on, Enos Slaughter, who came to our conference, deliberately spiked Jackie in the back of his ankle and denied it till his dying day. And Jackie got his revenge several years later. Slaughter, playing for the Cardinals at that time, not yet the Yankees, was trying to stretch a single into a double. Jackie remembered that incident 6 years prior and took his glove and smashed it into Slaughter's mouth, knocking out his 2 front teeth, which I imagine he wanted to get for Christmas. Jackie was equally successful in his second year. He doubled his RBI production, and he moved from first base to second base as the Dodgers traded Eddie Stanky, one of his defenders, but also a person from Alabama with racist underpinnings. In the next 6 years, Jackie never hit below .308. In the third year, when all the trappings of humility and Christ-like gentleness was removed, he became a terror on the base paths. He led the league in batting, beating out the great Stan Musial, 342 to 338. He stole 37 bases, indicating speed and daring. And he hit 16 home runs, and he knocked in 124 runs, and he was the first black player to win the most valuable player, just as he was the first black player to win the Rookie of the Year, which is now named in his honor. And of course, in 1955, after suffering loss after loss to the damn Yankees, the Yankees in the World Series, starting with Whitey Ford, were beating the Dodgers, so it seemed like Yogi Berra's prediction and statement was going to come true, deja vu all over again. Jackie, nimble and quick, with craft and speed, steals home plate and shakes up Yogi Berra. To this day, people say he was out, but the umpire called him safe. And what that did was to sort of rebuild the Dodger spirit, and Jackie led his team to triumph. The only time the Brooklyn Dodgers won a World Series. In 1956, the opposite occurred. God returned the favor and sided with the Yankees. In a 7-game series marked by Don Larson's famous perfect no-hitter, helped by a miraculous play, Jackie hit a bullet to third base that caromed off the third baseman's glove, that Gil McDougall, playing short, threw to first, and thereby got Jackie by a step. Mickey Mantle, not known for his great fielding or great arm, at that time had enough speed to take Gil Hodges' would-be triple or maybe inside the home run. And then came, happily, a controversial third strike on Dale Mitchell at the end of the game. So the Yankees won. And Jackie decided to hang up his spikes. No baseball team came to Jackie with an offer. No one said, "Coach, you're so experienced." They put the kibosh on him just as they did Babe Ruth. As they said of Babe Ruth, he couldn't take care of himself. How could he, as a manager, take care of 24 others? Jackie was brilliant. He could have been a coach, a manager, a general manager. Instead, he went to serve as vice president of the Chock full of Nuts, the Heavenly Coffee. And his boss was a Jewish man named William Black. His real name was Schwartz, but I guess it looked better on the marquee, call him Black. And he worked for 7 years as this pioneer executive. And he went from that to banking, opened up the Freedom National Bank in Harlem, and construction. He was the first African American to broadcast a baseball game nationwide, but no offer. And then came the Civil Rights Movement. Jackie resigned from the NAACP, claiming it was too conservative. It wasn't speaking out to young people. And so he began to hold a jazz festival at his home in Stamford, Connecticut, to raise money for Dr. King and Dr. King's attempt to undo the wrongs of law and order in the South. In fact, shortly before he was assassinated, Dr. King said that Jackie Robinson made my work easier. Without him, there's no Martin Luther King. And do the math. Jackie integrates baseball in 1947. The Supreme Court decision, 9-0, occurred 7 years later, in 1954. Heroic woman, Rosa Parks, refuses, like Jackie, 11 years earlier, to sit in the back of a bus. That same year witnesses the brutal slaying of Emmett Till. In 1957, Lyndon Johnson, head of the Senate, manages to get the first civil rights bill through Congress, first since Reconstruction. And then, of course, in 1960, the election looms, and Jackie supports Richard Nixon, because when he asked John Kennedy, who solicited Jackie's support, what are you going to do for blacks in the country? And Kennedy replied with a very unusual candor, but sort of naivete. He said, "Jackie, I come from Massachusetts. We don't have many African Americans living there." And Jackie turned to Nixon. But Nixon seemed to be oblivious to Jackie's attempts to further the civil rights agenda. So when Nixon came out of obscurity and seemingly permanent obscurity in '68, Jackie switched sides and supported Hubert Humphrey. In both times, 60 and 68, Jackie backed the loser. But he worked to promote civil rights as a commissioner in the administration of Nelson Rockefeller. And he was deeply distressed when Goldwater and in that famous Republican convention at the Cow Palace turned against Rockefeller and the moderate Republicans. And from that point on, you could consider him an independent. Then came tragedy. His oldest son and namesake, Jackie Robinson Jr., goes to Vietnam and comes back a drug addict, a heroin addict, a thief. And Jackie laments his son's condition. "I guess I was a better role model to American youth than I was to my own son." And finally, his son rehabilitates himself through Daytop, the outpost in Staten Island. And he's really thriving. And then one night, in his sports car, driving the Merritt Parkway, he crashes and dies instantly. And Jackie is bereft. And so in 1971, shortly after that incident, Jackie Roosevelt Robinson comes to Long Island University to serve as commentator at a basketball game. For I forgot to mention that Jackie was one of the greatest basketball players in college. He led the Pacific Coast League in scoring 2 years in a row. And he, unlike most other players, he was able to dunk. At 5'11", that was not an easy task. And when Buck Lay, our then athletic director / provost, asked Jackie what would he like to tell the youngsters of LRU Brooklyn, he said, "I'd like to talk about drugs. I'd like to talk about my son. I'd like to urge them not to go that way." And before I show the clip, I want to mention that the significance of Jackie was his ability to reach out and touch the lives of so many people. During his heyday as a baseball player, he went around the country talking to youngsters at high schools and colleges, urging brotherhood, urging interfaith relationships, urging a different style of life. Make America, America again, in the words of Langston Hughes, the brilliant African-American poet. And Jackie did something which was unique. And there is in our book, and I should get it, there's a picture on the cover of a little boy from Brooklyn who is nestled in the arms of Jackie Robinson. And Jackie spoke to this little Jewish boy from Flatbush, as he did to this little Jewish boy in the film. Jackie spoke to youngsters of all persuasions. And recall, in 1947, there was a play on Broadway. It was called the South Pacific. And Oscar Hammerstein, the lyricist, wrote a lyric that seemed to represent what so many Americans, bathed in ignorance and clothed in prejudice, knew by heart. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. Jackie taught otherwise. You've got to be taught to love and care for. This incident occurred on the last day of the 1951 series, preceding the 3-game playoff, which the Giants stole, we now know, due to cheating through an electronics scheme that wasn't revealed until Joshua Prager broke the story in the Wall Street Journal. It's the last day of the season. The Giants have already beaten the Braves and are half a game ahead of the Dodgers. So the Dodgers are playing the Phillies in Philadelphia. And Branca and Preacher Row are both knocked out of the box. The Dodgers are losing 4-0. They get 2 runs, then the Phillies go up 6-2. The Dodgers get 3 runs back. Jackie is in the middle of this rally. It's 6-5 in favor of the Phillies. They added on 2 runs. It's 8-5, and the game is looks like the Dodgers are out of it. And again, Jackie instills a rally, and it goes into a tie. And then both the Philly manager and the Dodger manager decide to bring in their aces. Robin Roberts for the Phillies, Don Newcomb for the Dodgers. And the game goes into the 12th inning, tied. And Newcomb is tiring. He loads the bases. There are 2 out. And up to the plate is a man who inspires a famous novel, later a movie, Eddie Wakus. I'm referring to Bernard Malamud's The Natural. And Eddie Wakus was a left-handed hitter. He was attacked, he actually was shot by one of his groupies who loved him. She was obviously meshuggah, a little crazy, and she spent a lot of time in a mental institution. But here is Eddie Wakus making his comeback. And I'm going to reenact 6'4". I always wanted to be 6'4", so and sometimes I wanted to be black, so I'm pretending to do both. Newcomb lifts his arm, throws a brilliant pitch, which Wakus, bang! Now remember, this is dangerous because I haven't slept because of his back, so please, I need your attention. It's over the second base. Jackie is about to see the whole season evaporate. And Connie Desmond, I think, was the announcer. And he says, "The base hit into center field!" And Jackie, he makes it. Now, Jackie inspired me to do that too. Thank you. So he saves the game. 2 innings. It's top of the 14th. It's 6 o'clock. The sun is descending in Philadelphia. 2 out. Jackie Robinson, top of the 14th inning. Jackie Robinson gets up to bat against Robin Roberts, arguably the best right-hander outside of Newcomb in the National League. There it goes, a long drive into left field. As Mel Allen would say, going, it is gone. Jackie wins the game with his glove and with his bat. The writers thought it was the greatest game they'd ever witnessed, and Jackie did it. Unfortunately, his glory days ended without an attempt to bring him back. So 9 days before he died of a massive heart attack, Jackie appeared at a World Series game between Cincinnati and Oakland. He was honored that day with his buddy, Pee Wee Reese, who famously, despite the controversy, put his arm around Jackie to show solidarity and camaraderie. He thanked the captain, Pee Wee, for his support, and though he was legally blind due to diabetes, he said, "I am very pleased to be here today, but I'll be very much more pleased to see a black face at third base coaching and managing a major league team." Several years later, a Robinson didn't make it, Frank Robinson. So Jackie's attempt to break barriers lasted till his dying day. A massive heart attack fell Jackie. And to conclude, I want to read something that is so brilliant. Need my glasses. That I have to borrow someone else's words. It was a eulogy that the Reverend Jesse Jackson delivered, and I just want to. Is this on? Yes. Okay. And then we'll have time for Q&A, unless you want to do push-ups with me. He said yes in 1947, and pride in the black community welled up when he took the field. He reminded us of our birthright to be free. He created ripples of possibility, which 7 years later, the Supreme Court decision confirmed. For a fleeting moment, America tried democracy, and it worked. For a fleeting moment, our nation became one under God. This man turned the stumbling block into a stepping stone. Like life-giving oxygen, Jackie infiltrated baseball for us. He was an instrument of peace, marched in Birmingham, Alabama, castigated the power structure. He accepted the honor of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And no higher moment can be named for him than by naming blacks as managers. Like the graves of those who had gone before, Jackie would bear the birth date and his death date, 1919 to 1972. We seldom know our death date, but on that dash between those two dates is where we live. And for everyone, there's a dash of possibility to choose the high road or the low road, to make things better or to make things worse. On that dash, he snapped the barbed wire of prejudice. He brought the gift of new expectations on that dash. His feet danced on the base paths, as you saw, in this magnificent film. But it was more than a game. Jackie began playing a chess game. He was the Black Knight, and he checkmated bigotry. "Yes, sir, all right, go ahead," the voice replied in the audience at Riverside Church. In his last dash, Jackie stole home, and Jackie is safe. His enemies can rest assured of that. Call me nigger, call me black boy, I don't care. I told Jesus, it will be all right if I change my name. No grave can hold this body down because it belongs to the ages. And all of us are better off because the man with that body, the man with that soul and that mission passed this way. Then Roberta Flack sang the traditional Negro spiritual, I told Jesus, it will be all right if I change my name. And Reverend Campbell gave the benediction with the words, go forth to your God in peace. And the journey to Jackie Robinson's last resting place in Brooklyn's Cypress Hills Cemetery began. As a last note, at that very World Series game, Jackie was walking off the field, and Joe Morgan, who used the same number, 42, throughout his career, one of the last to do it, other than the Yankee closer, Mariano Rivera, went over to Jackie, and he said, thank you, Jackie. And then Jim Murray, who was also going blind, said to Jackie, oh, Jackie, it's so good to see you. And Jackie replied, oh, it's so good to see you. Both, of course, couldn't see each other. And Jim said, I wish I could see you again. And who wouldn't? Thank you very much. Well, that's an excellent question from an excellent leader. Jackie Robinson was voted the second most popular American in 1947. The first was Bing Crosby. Ba, 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 ba. And that made a difference because Jackie became a standard bearer, not only for African Americans, but he became a conduit for good news. So yes, I think he opened doors. He opened doors, by the way, for the disabled. Carl Erskine, who could not attend our conference, sent us a video. And he said, Jackie helped me win 2 rings. One ring, World Series 1955, another ring for my son Jimmy, who was born with Down syndrome. He had won a medal, a ring, for the Olympics, Special Olympics. So Jackie was the manufacturer of a ripple effect. He enabled people to regain their dignity, and that was his contribution.
Why did Branch Rickey not want him to fight back? And why did no one pick him up after he retired?
Okay. Excellent question from Ann, our wonderful member of our Civica. She's the treasurer, right? And an honest one, okay? See, I brought my own plaque. He was, the reason, I'll answer the second question. He was considered a troublemaker, a gadfly. One example, the Dodger players who were African American couldn't stay at the Chase Hotel in St. Louis. And one day, Jackie said, in effect, he was sitting with Don Newcomb and Roy Campanella and Junior Gilliam. He said, I'm not going to take this shit anymore. I'm going in. And the manager stopped him. He said, blacks are not allowed here. Why aren't we allowed here, he demanded. Because we don't want you to swim in our pool. And Jackie said, which was not true, I don't swim. I want to get a bed to sleep. And from that point on, black Dodgers were allowed to sleep alongside of white Dodgers. And so I think they were afraid of him because he was a rebel with a cause. Now, what was the first question? Oh, okay. Branch Rickey actually called in all the black ministers from Brooklyn and told them, you know, this is a great experiment. Please tell your parishioners when you come to Ebbets Field, dress well, put away the whiskey bottles. Maybe this is a stereotype, but he was very cagey. He was very, very pragmatic. And he said, Jackie must set an example. And if he fights back, it would be another example of boisterous behavior, which was associated with blacks. Okay, so he was trying to put the lid on any disruption. Yes, they both met in the Negro Leagues. Dobie played for the Newark Eagles, which was once the Brooklyn Eagles. No relation to the newspaper. And Dobie actually came to LRU as a basketball player in 1943. And so, like Jackie, he was a multi-talented athlete. And he actually was signed by the Cleveland Indians the same year that Jackie made his debut. But he didn't have Jackie's maturity. He was younger, and he was put in a new position. He was a second baseman in the Negro Leagues, and he was converted to an outfielder. But he experienced the same rebuff. When he joined the Cleveland Indians, not a single person other than the manager and the owner, Bill Veck, as in Rec, shook his hand. One exception, Joe Gordon, the former Yankee, said, let's play catch. And so he had to win friends and influence people on his own team. I didn't mention that Jackie was also the subject of a possible boycott by his own team. There was a petition signed. The only northerner who signed it was Carl Furillo, the Scoonge, because of his preference for Scungili. But what happened, Leo DeRocha was still manager before he was banished, told the assembled players, you can take that petition and shove it up your ass, because Jackie is going to play for us and he's going to make us money, as he did. And if you don't want to be on this team, we'll get rid of you. And that's what Ricky did. The People's Choice, the most popular Brooklyn Dodger before Jackie was Dixie Walker, and he got his walking papers. And when Dixie orchestrated this petition, Pee Wee Reese, who was also from the South, from Kentucky, not Alabama, difference, he said, Dixie, you bring a black nanny to take care of your children. What's the difference of living with a black nanny and playing with a black ball player? And Dixie Walker, many years later, apologized and said Jackie was a gentleman and one of the greatest players he ever saw, both on and off the field.
Joe, first of all, let me thank you for just an absolutely brilliant presentation. It was it was not only informative and obviously meticulously researched, as you always do, but it was heartfelt and emotional, and I couldn't help suppress a couple of tears during the course of your presentation, so thank you. One quick question. When Jackie was let go, when he retired, however you want to phrase it, and not hired in any capacity by the Dodgers or anybody in Major League Baseball, was there any serious pushback within the black community, within the press, within the media about this gross injustice? Yeah.
Yeah, the Dodgers had a different role model in Roy Campanella. Roy Campanella was half Italian, half black. His father was Italian. And he was one of these go along to get along types. And so they still had a number of black players. Jackie had antagonized many newspaper men because, I'll give you one example. In 1953, Jackie appeared on a radio program that I listened to avidly every Saturday morning. It was the New York Times Youth Forum, moderated by Dorothy Gordon. And Jackie used the platform as bully pulpit to attack the New York Yankees for not signing a black ball player. They had several great players in their system, but they never brought him up. One was Vic Power, a great first baseman, excellent hitter, never hit below 300 in the minor leagues, but they said no to Vic Power because, one, He fielded as a first baseman everything with one hand, and that was against the tradition of two-handed catches. And secondly, he dated white women. And that was off the charts. Thirdly, he also was aggressive. He would go into, where he played in Kansas City, he would go into a restaurant, which was segregated, and he'd demand service. And the waitress invariably would say, "We don't serve niggers here." And he replied, "That's okay, I don't eat niggers anywhere." So they thought he was too uppity. There was another black player named Bobby Thurman who was outstanding, and the Yankees didn't. So they finally got Elson Howard in 1955. And what does Casey Stengel say? He says, "I finally got me a nigger, and he's the only one who can't run." So there is in the Yankee system a kind of built-in prejudice. George Weiss, who later became general manager of the Mets after he was fired, said that most of our players are from the South, and they could not cotton to playing alongside of black players. Jackie also, and this is the kicker, he was traded by the Dodgers to the New York Giants, the arch enemy, for $25,000 and a mediocre pitcher named Dick Littlefield. And what Rachel said, it was like selling someone out for several shekels of silver. So, and what Jackie did, he had a exclusive with Look magazine to explain why he retired. And in this film, Jackie does write a letter to Horace Stoneham and the Giant management and said, "Thank you for offering me this contract, but I feel it's best for me to pursue other vocations." Yeah, he was vice president of management. All the employees of Chock-full of Nuts were black. And I remember surviving college by eating at Chock-full of Nuts. I was a commuter to Columbia College, and every afternoon, if my mother didn't pack one of her cholesterol specials, I would go into Chock-full of Nuts for 50 cents. I would get a bowl of soup, a cup of coffee, heavenly coffee that Rockefeller's money couldn't buy, and a nutted cheese bread, and it sustained me throughout. Of course, there was a certain kind of sort of risque reference to Chock-full of Nuts. My Columbia mates would refer to it, "You're going to eat at the scrotum again?" And that was their way of showing disdain for me, my working class habits. You know, Columbia attracted the Feinschmeckers, the rich kids from out of town. But I survived. And that's where I met Jackie Robinson when they opened up I was telling several colleagues here how I met Jackie Robinson for the first time. I was at Columbia. He was opening up a store on 116th Street and Broadway. And I said, "Mr. Robinson, I always wanted your autograph." He said, "Sure." And I was so nervous. I went into my bag. I always carry a bag. I took out a checkbook. He says, "You don't want me to sign that." So then the next best thing was the New York Post, when it was a newspaper instead of a Murdoch rag. And I gave it to him, and he signed it in the sports column. And then 3 days later, I asked my mom, "Where's the New York Post?" She says, "I threw it out." Well, that was the end of my love affair with my mother. Okay. Thank you.